Okay, so get this right. We're talking big-time tech investors. The kind who wouldn't be caught dead associating with, well, him just a while back.
Right.
Now they're suddenly throwing millions behind a potential comeback. I mean, come on, something's not adding up here. David Sachs, Chamath Palihapitiya, these are venture capitalists, podcasters, Silicon Valley royalty,
Yeah.
and they went on record just savaging Trump back in 2021.
Oh, I remember. It was brutal.
It wasn't just disagreement, it was this guy belongs in jail level stuff.
Oh, yeah, especially Palihapitiya. Didn't he want Trump to serve, like, the combined sentences of every January 6th rioter or something?
Yeah, something wild like that. And
So
now
it's a $50,000 plate fundraiser in San Francisco.
12 million bucks they're aiming for. So what changed? Did they find some magic algorithm that suddenly made Trump palatable?
Well, algorithms can do a lot, but even they can't erase the past that easily.
Exactly. We got to rewind this thing, go back to early 2021 when all this went down. Remember January 6th? I mean, the country was reeling.
Like nothing I'd ever seen.
And Sachs, on their podcast, he was like shaken to his core. I mean, he was saying things like Trump loaded the gun that led to the whole thing, called for him to be held accountable, and then Biden gets inaugurated.
Right.
You can practically hear the relief in his voice.
I think a lot of people felt that way at the time, regardless of their political leanings. It was a lot.
And it wasn't just talk either. Remember that whole thing about Trump potentially facing criminal charges?
Oh, yeah?
Palihapitiya was all for it, like really fired up about it.
Yeah, he was pretty vocal.
But fast forward to now, and it's all smiles and fundraising dinners. Talk about whiplash.
It does make you wonder, what's the angle here?
Right, because this isn't just some random change of heart. We're talking about a complete 180.
Absolutely. There's got to be more to the story.
And that's what we're diving into today. What's really driving this shift? Is it strategy? Disillusionment? Some kind of power play? We've got to unpack all of it.
Right, because this isn't just about one election or even one president.
It's about understanding how Silicon Valley wields its power.
Exactly. And what it means for the rest of us when their allegiances shift so drastically.
I mean, it's not exactly a state secret that Silicon Valley has its fingers in the political pie, right?
Right.
But this just hits different. It's like we're so used to them being like the darlings of the, disrupt the system crowd.
Yeah. There's always been that kind of anti-establishment vibe.
Exactly. And now they're cozying up to, well, the definition of the establishment. It's wild.
It's definitely a head-scratcher.
Hmm.
Because on the one hand, you have this long history of Silicon Valley leaning pretty hard Democrat.
Oh, absolutely.
But then there's also always been this, libertarian streak running through it, too.
Yeah, that whole move fast and break things, but like with regulations.
Exactly. A deep aversion to anything that might slow down innovation or cut into those profits. And that's where things get interesting with someone like Trump.
Because his whole thing was deregulation, lower taxes, music to some of these tech years.
Exactly. So even if they weren't huge fans of the, let's say, style, the policies themselves might have held some appeal.
And let's not forget, this isn't the first time some in Silicon Valley have been open to Trump. I mean, Peter Thiel.
Right, the OG Trump supporter in the tech world.
Dude was practically waving a Make America Great Again hat back in 2016. Spoke at the RNC even.
And don't forget about Palantir, his company. They did pretty well during the Trump administration, snagged some big government contracts.
See, that's what I mean. It's like this weird mix of ideology and, let's be real, straight up business interests.
It's always a mix, isn't it?
And it makes you wonder how much of this shift is about genuine belief versus, cold, hard calculation.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Because on the surface, it seems like a huge contradiction. But then you dig a little deeper.
And you start to see the threads of self-interest, the potential for profit, the access to power.
And suddenly, it's not so black and white anymore, is it?
But not at all. It gets very murky very quickly.
So where does all this leave us, with these tech guys and their political moves?
Right.
It's like it goes beyond just who's going to be president next, right?
Absolutely. This gets at something much bigger.
It's about the whole system. Can we really have all this tech innovation, all this talk of changing the world,
Right.
and keep it separate from the dirty world of politics? Are those things even compatible?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because the reality is...
The reality is money talks.
It does. And in Silicon Valley, it talks loudly.
Exactly. And it can make some pretty strange bedfellows.
It certainly can. And I think that's what we really need to be paying attention to here. Not just who's supporting whom, but why.
Okay, so let's say I'm someone who's really into all this tech stuff, right?
Sure.
I'm following crypto, AI, the metaverse, all of it.
Right.
This whole thing with Trump and Silicon Valley, Doesn't matter to me.
It absolutely should. Because
Mhm.
here's the thing. All of those technologies you mentioned, they're not going to exist in a vacuum.
Right, they're going to be regulated, taxed, controlled.
Exactly. And the people making those decisions, they're the same ones who are influenced by these political donations, these backroom deals, these shifts in allegiance.
So it's like my crypto wallet could be affected by who these guys are having dinner with.
In a roundabout way, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but that's the level of influence we're talking about here.
That's kind of terrifying when you put it like that.
It can be,
Mm.
but it's also a call to action, right? We can't just sit back and let these things happen without understanding the forces at play.
So what do we do? Like, how do we even begin to navigate this?
I think the first step is just being aware. Recognizing that the tech world isn't some utopia filled with altruistic innovators. It's a business, and a powerful one at that.
With its own agendas.
Exactly.
Mm.
And those agendas often intersect with politics in ways that aren't always transparent or, frankly, in the best interest of the public. So be informed, be critical, and don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, because that's what this deep dive is all about, giving you the tools to think for yourself.
And that's what we've tried to do here today, to peel back the layers of this story to understand not just what's happening, but why it matters. And it's something to keep in mind, not just during election season, but always. Because the future of tech, and frankly all of us, depends on it.